Hello, my name is Dan Skibound, and I'm here once again with Mr. Andrew Cabral for another episode of the 52 Must See Movies and Why They Matter, based on this book right here. Um, it is The Essentials by Robert Osborne from Turner Classic Movies, and they created a list, him and some guests, of the greatest, what they feel like are the essential 52 must-see movies for all film fans. And myself and Andrew and Stephen Billings and Mark and Billy have all been knocking these off one at a time, going through these movies, and we're discussing them and we're sharing our thoughts with you out there, the viewers. We will spoil this movie, so if you don't want to be spoiled, go see the movie first, then watch our video discussing the movie. So, no further. God, well, I can't say the phrase I want to say, but here is Andrew Cabral.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be back here, and we're discussing a classic of classics. Probably a film not a lot of people are familiar with if you're not a huge cinephile or a fan of really old classic films. This film is from 1932, one of the earliest films I think we've done here. I believe the only one we've done before this one um, is
All
maybe
Quiet on the
Nosferatu.
Western Front.
Well, that's after. No, that's before this. You're right.
All Quiet on
Um,
the Western Front.
all quite. Did you do Nosferatu? Um,
I don't think Nosferatu's in this.
I don't know what Nosferatu is, but if we had done Nosferatu, it would have predated this. But yes, All Quiet on the Western Front did predate this film. And what is interesting in just relation to All Quiet on the Western Front, this is also an early Best Picture winner when it comes to the Oscars. This is the fifth Best Picture winner, which is very interesting because the Oscars go back to kind of just the late 1920s. I don't know if many people are familiar with them going back that far, but yes, the first ever Best Picture winner was Wings, a silent film, and it's the only silent film to ever win Best Picture. Kind of was, at the right place at the right time. We're still kind of in the silent era when it came out. So yeah, this is a great film filled with a lot of stars. This is an ensemble film filled with stars like Greta Garbo, John Barrymore, Joan Crawford, Lionel Barrymore. It's a kind of a star-studded cast for the time. I mean, some of these actors are probably not well known to a lot of people, but at the time they were pretty big. So we'll be getting into all of the different characters that they play in this film, and I think this is a great film. I had first watched it a few years ago when I had first bought it on Blu-ray, kind of as a blind buy, and I watched it and I was blown away by how very contemporary the film feels, and kind of just the stars, how they play off one another, I think is fantastic. We'll get into all of that, and forewarned everybody, we will be spoiling the plot of the movie. So if you don't care about that, continue watching. But if you do, go back and see the movie first.
Absolutely. All right. So one of the things we're going to do a little bit differently on this episode, because I kind of like this. The story's a good story and it's an interesting story amongst the people in the Grand Hotel. But what I thought was really fascinating is this is the first time that they ever put five major stars or in a movie together. And MGM and the director Edmund Golding, they came up with this idea, and it was they made a Broadway play of it, and it was only the men that kind of got the main roles in the Broadway play, but in the movie they put a couple powerful actresses of the time, Greta Garbo and Joan Crawford, to round out the cast. And like you said, you named these major stars. John Barrymore, Wallace Beery, Lionel Barrymore, and I already said Greta Garbo, Joan Crawford. We also have Louis Stone, and I cannot be remiss if I don't say this at the beginning of the show. Well, we're kind of about 5 minutes into the show. Andrew, but you're going to get it anyway. People keep coming and going, and nothing ever happens. This is Lewis Stone. He's a vet, and he has some damage to his face, and he's a doctor. He plays Dr. Otterslag.
Otterslag, yeah.
And he plays Dr. Otterslag, and he utters that line at the beginning of the movie and, spoiler, at the end of the movie. But as soon as I heard the line, I said, this is going to be a line that I'm going to remember throughout the movie because it's such a misnomer. It's not people keep coming and going and nothing ever happens. All kinds of stuff happens with these people that are coming and going. So it's kind of like a joke in a way. People keep coming and going, but nothing ever happens. So what I want your opinion on that line, and
yeah, it's almost a satirical line because a lot of things happen at the Grand Hotel, as we see throughout the movie, and the Grand Hotel itself is like a very popular destination. It's this kind of grand hotel. It is the film itself is set in Berlin in probably the early 1930s. This is post World War I, pre World War II. So we're not dealing with a lot of elements that'll come up later, like the Nazis and the rise of Hitler. This is like right before that's about to happen. So Germany and Berlin is a hub. It's a destination for people on vacation and people going on honeymoons and business people making their way through Europe. As we see in the movie, we see all these characters come in and out, and the idea is that this place is kind of a magical place almost. You know what I mean? It has this aura about it, and it's such a hub and a hive of things happening. And yeah, that line perfectly bookmarks the beginning and end of this movie, really kind of encapsulating what happens in the Grand Hotel seemingly stays at the Grand Hotel. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down the list of characters that these actresses and actors play, and just in a group, sum up these characters, because we could be talking about these guys for a long time. So I just kind of want to go.
Want me to do it, Dan? If you're having trouble pronouncing some of them,
no, I got the names here. I got all the names here.
Okay.
If you want to, Greta Garbo plays Grzinskaya. She's a stenographer.
No, she's the ballerina.
Oh no, okay, that's right. Joan Crawford's the stenographer. My bad.
Yes.
Okay. Grzinskaya. She's like this famous ballerina that happens to come to the Grand Hotel, and we'll get into the plot here before too long. John Barrymore is Baron Felix von Gagern. Now, this guy, I'll tell you what, if you don't like John Barrymore before this or after this, if you've never seen a John Barrymore movie, he is fantastic in this role. Because we'll get into the story. Wallace Beery, I've seen him in something. I know I've seen Wallace Beery in something. He plays General Director Pricing. Now, this guy has a major role in the movie. Once again, this is a major character in the movie. Lionel Barrymore plays Otto Kringeline. And I'll tell you what, everybody has different motivations. All of these characters have different motivations in this movie. That's what makes it so interesting to see where their story arcs go. And of course, I said Joan Crawford played Flemschen. She plays a stenographer named Flemschen. And I'll tell you, I like all the characters in the movie, but Joan Crawford's Flemschen might be my favorite character in the whole movie. But I did like the Baron. I did like John Barrymore a lot too. I mean, all the characters are very interesting and so distinctly different from one another. And of course, I said Lewis Stone as Dr. Otterslag. All right, so just give me your thoughts on these characters, and how while watching the movie and how you felt about these characters, because I was just like, okay, well, interesting. every time they introduce somebody new.
Yeah, all of them are rather different, but they're all kind of mesh well together. My favorite, just because you mentioned your favorite being the stenographer character played by Joan Crawford, my favorite's the Lionel Barrymore character, Kringeline. To me, he is one of the more humanistic and more uh, personally relatable characters for me because he's someone who doesn't seem to have ulterior motives that are that are negative in any way. I mean, the Baron is also on the side. He's a thief. The stenographer is just trying to get ahead in life any way she can, working for this pricing guy. She's willing to kind of almost sell herself in order to get ahead when it comes to her profession. But the Greta Garbo character is someone who has some of the darker aspects to her character. She's probably my second favorite character. Just the way Greta Garbo plays her as this kind of broken individual who is pretty much on the verge of self-destruction or is already there, I think is fantastically well done by Greta Garbo. I hadn't seen a lot of Greta Garbo films the first time I had watched this movie many years ago, but by now I have, and she was a fantastic actress at the time. I believe she was nominated for 4 Oscars throughout her career, and she may have won one as an honorary Oscar for, I believe, charitable work or something like that. And she is an amazing actress, and of course, Joan Crawford is probably the one people most recognize. I think even non-film fans know the name Joan Crawford, and this was early on in her career before she became kind of the huge name that we know now. I don't think she really became super famous probably until like the 1940s when she was in like Mildred Pierce and a lot of the more familiar films that people know of. She is someone who acted for a very long time. She started in the silent era, which closely predates when the Grand Hotel came out. She was in a lot of silent pictures in the 1920s, and she worked pretty much all the way up until the 1970s. So she had a long, long career. And the Barrymores, I weren't aware that the Barrymore family is a one of those Hollywood families. These big names that have multiple generations of actors and people working in the industry. Drew Barrymore, whom everybody knows, is the granddaughter of John Barrymore, and all and Lionel Barrymore is her great uncle. So there's a direct descendant line to someone whom probably many people are familiar with today. So this film it has a lot of things in it, just not only within the film, but outside of the film and within film history. So it's a great film all the way around. But yeah, the characters are 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 the strength of this movie. That's kind of what the movie relies on. It feels like a play being set in the Grand Hotel.
And I'm not gonna, and I have something I want to say as far as why this film is essential, but I'm going to wait till the end to discuss that. But all right, so let's get into the plot here. We're going to kind of go through the plot really quick. I'm not going to get a whole lot into the plot because even though each one of the characters has their own like agenda and stuff, the plot is pretty simple. You have Lionel Barrymore's character is a math guy. He helps do the books of this company, and he comes to the Grand Hotel because he wants to kind of spend the rest of his life just having fun and enjoying his life because he's going to die of cancer. The Wallace Beery character of General Pricing, General Director Pricing, he runs a company, and he's trying to make a deal with this other company, and he's having a hard time trying to make the deal with this other company. The Baron, John Barrymore, he's kind of a shyster character. He's not doing that well. He's kind of broke. He's kind of I don't know if you call him I guess he's a thief in some ways. He's kind of a shysty character. And of course, you mentioned Greta Garbo. She's a aging ballerina, and Flemshin's a stenographer who a couple different people try to get her to work for them and team up with them. specifically Wallace Beery's pricing and the Baron's John Barrymore, the Baron, Felix von Geiger. And so that those are the main characters, and they all kind of intersect in different ways until pretty much Lionel Barrymore, Kringlein, and the Baron by John kind of team up and go after pricing, because we find out that Lionel Barrymore's accountant character has somewhat of a revenge thing going on. He wants to get revenge on pricing for treating him bad all these years as an accountant for his company.
Yeah, there's a direct connection there between Kringlein and pricing. Kringlein used to be the accountant for pricing's company, so there's a direct connection there. And Kringlein is, just like Dan said, he is someone who is dying. They never I don't think they ever really specify if it's cancer or something or whatever. But all we know is that he basically wants one last blowout, one last shebang, and he's going to go to the Grand Hotel, spend money on champagne and caviar, gamble, do whatever, basically go for broke, if you will. And what I find so interesting about him is that he kind of just wants people to hang out with. He wants friends. He wants people just to spend time with him, because he seems like an extremely lonely person, someone who never really had anyone in his life that he could just talk with and be himself around. And that's why he and John Barrymore develop a really nice friendship. John Barrymore, the character, the Baron, realizes that this guy is a good guy and he just needs somebody to hang out with, essentially. So John Barrymore kind of befriends him in a way. And there's a great scene between pricing and Lionel Barrymore's character, where this pricing guy is someone who is such an egotistical jerk. He's an ass that he just constantly treats people like dirt. You know what I mean? And he treats the Lionel Barrymore character, whom he doesn't even recognize worked for his company. He says, "Get away from me!" Basically, why are you talking to me? You're less than nothing. And the Lionel Barrymore character basically comes out with this great monologue saying, you can't treat people like that. You don't treat people like that because it's a terrible way to be. It's a terrible personal trait. It's a great, great scene. And Kringlein has those character moments throughout. And John Barrymore's character is kind of the focal point to kind of all of the meetups, kind of all the connections. I consider him to be the main hub, because he not also befriends Kringlein, but he tries to kind of woo the Joan Crawford character. He falls in love and has a bit of a romance with the Greta Garbo character, and it's interesting how everything kind of pivots off of him. And Dan, if you want to move on, because there's so much, it's tough to define the plot of this movie, because it's just kind of characters interacting with one another for almost 2 hours. There is a plot throughout the film, and it does move from beat to beat, starting with the Kringlein and John Barrymore relationship, moving on to John Barrymore and Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford with the stenographer. The John Barrymore character is a thief, and he's actually trying to steal the pearls of the Greta Garbo character. And there's a great scene where he basically gets caught in her hotel room, and he basically has to come up with some type of cockamamie idea where, yes, I've been admiring you from afar. I've been sending you flowers. I'm a great admirer of yours, and I had to. He has a great line where he walks. He's like, "Oh, I just wanted to breathe the same air that you've been breathing," and I'm like, "That's a great line. Why haven't I thought of lines like that?" And it's a great character interactions throughout this entire movie.
And he's sneaking into the rooms of different characters by the window, but we never see him come and go via window.
Yeah, he kind of he's almost like a cat burglar, if you will. And what's interesting is that he is a baron, so he comes from money, but the thing is that he's spent all of his money and he's gambled it all the way. He has a gambling problem we see throughout the movie. There's a specific scene where he gets Kringlein to set up a poker game, because Kringlein has all this extra cash that he wants to use, and Kringlein is so desperate that he's just kind of flashing his money around, saying, "I've got this amount of money. I've got 6,000 whatever, I have 6,000 marks, just come hang out with me. And I'm like, you don't tell people how much money you have on you. That's how you get robbed. And there's a moment after the poker game where um John Barrymore's character kind of takes his winnings and takes it reluctantly. He doesn't want to do it. He's desperate for money. He owes people money. He's kind of working with seedy people who want to rob the Greta Garbo's character's pearls. And once he can't go through with it because he falls in love with the Greta Garbo character, he's desperate for money any way he can. And he takes the money, but then when Kringleine's looking for it, he feels bad. And he's like, "Oh, here's your wallet. It's over here." So while these people kind of revolve in a gray area a little bit, specifically the John Barrymore character, there's some good traits in him. There's some good traits, I think, in all these characters. I think Kringleine is the one who's the most good of all of the characters. And maybe
Yeah, Kringleine's, he's the most admirable, let's say, of all these characters. A lot of these characters aren't that admirable, even though I do like the Joan Crawford Flemshing character. I thought her arc throughout the movie was kind of good because she wants to work and make some money and work for Wallace Beery, but then she realizes Wallace Beery isn't a nice guy. Then she teams up with John Barrymore as the Baron. It's just
I think she has a great character arcs. There's a lot of character arcs in this film. Hers is one of the strongest, and Greta Garbo's one is another strong one. We don't get to see her a lot in the movie.
No.
She only actually has one scene really with the John Barrymore character, and it's that one scene I was referencing, the one where he tries to steal the pearls and gets caught, and that's when they develop this romance, this kind of like love at first sight romance, and it changes her character's optimism about life, because right before that, the reason why he reveals himself in that scene is she's about to commit suicide. She believes that she has run her course as an actress. Nobody not an actress, but as a ballet dancer. Nobody apparently shows up to any of her performances anymore, and she kind of just really hates herself. And the film is really dark in that respect, where someone's borderline trying to commit suicide. And this is kind of interesting to me because this film came out, I believe, right before the Hays Code was put into place. It's kind of the first kind of movie code that they put in to kind of regulate the content that was put in movies. That's when you started seeing things like a man and woman sleeping in different beds, and there was less violence and less sexual references, and women couldn't be like over sexualized and things like that. So this film really pushed the envelope when it came to content in the 1930s. I mean, suicide is still something that is covered in movies today, very heavily so, because it's more prevalent in our society than it probably was back in the 30s. But it's nice to see a movie way back then kind of showing that it's a very real problem.
The thing is, if you look at the characters' motivations throughout the movie, all the different things, Flemshing's kind of a down on her luck, trying to get some work. What's his name? Wallace Beery is trying to get his company to make this big deal to grow the company. The Baron's a shyster, kind of a thief. He's down on his luck. She's about to commit suicide. The Gruzinskaya, Greta Garbo. Who else do I have that I haven't mentioned here? I mentioned pretty much all the characters. So they all have kind of dark, like subplots going within their characters. So you have that they give the plot, the script really gives them motivations, different kinds of motivations, because they're all having kind of a tough time. They're all down on their luck in a way. We run across all these people that end up at the Grand Hotel that aren't really doing that well because they're all under a lot of pressure in one way or another. And if this sounds familiar, you might have seen a few other movies do this, where you have a location, in this case, the Grand Hotel. You might have seen a movie called Crash. I know a lot of people don't like Crash, but Crash took this type of storytelling to the utmost excellence, in my opinion. And they had all these crisscrossing storylines, and they all ended up with this crash that happens on the highway in 2004. But this is just one movie. Crash is just one movie that came out that took this kind of storytelling. This is the very first time that a movie did this with multiple characters intersecting storylines, moving the plot forward and coming to a conclusion afterwards. Also, Agatha Christie stories are a lot like this. 10 Little Indians, Murder on the Orient Express. We have a great cast, and their characters all intersect because of one plot thing. In case of 10 Little Indians, it's a murder. In case of Murder on the Orient, it's a train. They're all on the train. In Grand Hotel, it's a hotel. But that's just a few. That's just a handful. Maybe you have a few others you could bring to mind, Andrew. But
yeah, I know the late Robert Altman was very well known for having his movies be ensemble pieces. Gosford Park, which was one of his last movies, may have been his last movie. Nashville, which he did back in the 70s, is another one that it's a lot more bigger in scope, in the sense there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's all set within the city of Nashville, Tennessee, the Music City. And yeah, he was very much really well known for doing all those things, for having a large ensemble and having them all intersect and be very character interactions really driving the movie. It's a really interesting thing that Grand Hotel seems to be the first film, like Dan was saying, to actually do this and to do it very successfully. Like we said, it won Best Picture that year, so it was definitely well received at the time. And I think it's really good now. I think it holds up. I mean, of course, it's being it all set in one place. You're not relying on any of the limitations of filmmaking at the time. We're not talking about using large set pieces or special effects or anything like that. Anything that would date the film is not really in it. But what is great about it is that it feels like a play. Like I mentioned earlier, it feels like people are reading off a really strong script, and a lot of the dialogue in this film is really, really good. A lot of it, like we've just been discussing, the interaction between the characters are all dialogue driven and all fantastic. I really enjoy this film a lot. I love the characters. And I don't know if Dan, would you like to reveal kind of what happens at the end of this movie to kind of bring it all into perspective, and
sure.
kind of bring this movie into a not a crashing halt, but kind of bring it into some type of head to end it, is that the John Barrymore character of the Baron ends up getting murdered. I mean, in a way, we're dealing with a film, like Dan was saying, that has a murder in it and has an ensemble cast. I don't know what it is about murder. That seems to be something that people like to do in ensemble movies. And he ends up, like I said, he was desperate for money. He needed to get money. He owed people money. So he decided that he was going to rob the Pricing character. He was going to sneak into his hotel room, and while Pricing was dealing with the stenographer in the next room, who has now taken up on his offer to travel with him to London and to kind of be his personal stenographer. But there's a lot of hints that it's a lot more than just doing the stenographing job. The idea is that he's kind of propositioning her for probably sex, essentially, or something in that range. It's very interesting how we're discussing about a movie from 1932 has a man in a position of power controlling a woman's career or her job through sex. It's extremely poignant that that's something we're covering now as well, because it's happening in the movie industry rampant for decades. But he is in the other room, kind of dealing with her, and John Barrymore comes in and steals his wallet, and then Pricing catches him, and then proceededly beats him to death with the telephone.
Chokes him.
Yeah, and we never. What's interesting, we never see the body. they keep it off screen. I mean, I guess they had to not show certain things at the time, but he's off screen, and the Joan Crawford character comes in and and she's beside herself. She's I don't think she screams, but she runs out. She goes to Kringleine's room. She gets in. Kringeline comes back. He is he starts talking with the pricing character, and the pricing basically says, "I'll give you money. I'll give you want your job back. You want a better job. I'll give you this." And Kringleine's like, "No, what happened here is wrong, and the right thing has to be done. I have to call downstairs. The police need to be notified. Things need to be done on the up and up." And that's kind of just goes back to the idea of Kringleine being the most moralistic character in this film, the more person who is always trying to do the right thing because that's the way he is as a person. And what ends up happening is they take the body out, they get rid of he gets escorted out, and it's very interesting how he's just kind of gone. You know what I mean? There's no real anyone's really mourning for him. You don't get the sense that he had a lot of people that are going to be missing him. And the one woman that would probably miss him is the one they can't tell. The Greta Garbo character throughout this entire kind of third act sequence is off at doing one of her shows, and she's supposed to come back, and they're supposed to go away together to to a next location where she's going to be performing next. And basically, her assistant says, "Don't tell her about this because this will destroy her. It'll probably bring her further down than she was before." So they kind of have to lie to her and kind of keep up this ruse that, "Oh yeah, he'll meet you at the train later, or he'll meet you someplace later." And it's really kind of sad for her character and kind of tragic in a way. This movie has a very sour ending, although the film was kind of dark throughout. We're discussing all of these different kind of dark themes, and the film ends on a rather dire note, but ends with that quote, which is very satirical, almost oxymoronic, because we just witnessed someone get murdered at the Grand Hotel.
No, a lot of these characters end up together at the end of the movie. Like Kringeline and Flemschen end up together at the end of the movie. And they end up.
Basically, Kringeline says, like, "I've got all of this money. I don't have much time left. We've learned that the Joan Crawford character is someone who has had bigger aspirations in her life, but hasn't been able to fulfill any of them. She wants to travel, she wants to see the world, but she's kind of just a regular person who has to work and survive, like most people." So he says, "Come with me. We'll go to Paris. We'll go to London. We'll go wherever." And so they end up kind of forming this bonded relationship. And there's very interesting dialogue exchange between them where she says, "Oh, perhaps you won't die because they can cure anything these days," or something like that. And it leads me to believe was the Kringeline character really have a medical ailment? Was he really sick? Did he really have a terminal disease, or was he just at a point in his life where he didn't want to live anymore, almost losing the will to live because the world had kind of pushed him so far down? What we learned is that he worked as an accountant. He lost his job, probably didn't get paid much. He worked at that company for, like, I believe decades, probably half of his life, and they kind of just unceremoniously got rid of him. And so he's kind of at the point in his life where he can't really reinvent himself in any way. A lot of older people have to deal with, should I start at a job at a new place, or should I just retire, or where do I go from here? And I thought the Kringeline character didn't know where to go from there. I think he kind of just quit on life, and now he has kind of this rebirth in life from his experience here at the Grand Hotel, meeting the Baron, meeting the Flemschen character, and having a whole new lease on life. Also because of money. For some reason, money is a big theme throughout this whole movie. I don't know if you noticed it, Dan, but everyone always mentioned money. The pricing character's there because he's trying to make a business deal happen. The Baron is a gambler and he needs money. The Kringeline character is spending all of his money to try to find happiness. The Flemschen character is wants money, so she takes a kind of an unsavory position with the pricing character. I just thought that was interesting, that money seems to run throughout this whole movie. And the fact that it's at a Grand Hotel, which I think you have to be kind of wealthy to go there anyway. It seems like an upper echelon type of place to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it wasn't cheap. The Grand Hotel was not cheap. People were drinking champagne. They were eating caviar. There were poker games going on. There's like at least 3 bellmen that every time someone comes in, their car drives up to the front door. 3 guys escort them in. Oh, would you like to sign in? And then there's the desk clerk, and then there's the head bellman, and he's got it. Even the head bellman has a subplot in the movie. His wife is pregnant.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on that because he's kind of a side character where he actually starts and ends the movie almost with him and the doctor character, where he is like his wife's in like a multiple hour labor where she's just not giving birth, and he has to stay at the hospital the whole time that he's not working, and he's not getting any sleep, and he's just beside himself. And then by the end of the movie, he gets a phone call and his wife has finally given birth. The doctor character kind of is a side character as well. He moves in and out of the plot as well.
That's to be honest with you, Andrew, that's the unrecognized kind of like the best thing about this movie that you really don't think about when you're watching it. But the script is unbelievable. This is an amazing script to fit all these storylines, all these subplots, to start with certain characters and end with other characters, and fit this together where it makes sense, and that's the thing about great movies. There's things like cast, there's things like directing, there's things like screenplay, and that's what makes this movie such an essential movie. It's got so many great things going for it. And the most amazing thing about this film, and like you said, it won the Oscar in 1932 for Best Picture. It was not nominated for any other awards. This is the only award it was nominated for, and it won Best Picture for that year. And that is the most astounding thing, because the script is phenomenal. The acting is phenomenal. You think with a movie, usually when you have a great movie and you have a lot of actors and a lot of people, the actors are going to get nominated, the director is going to get nominated, the screenplay is going to get nominated, whatever, or sound or whatever, or the score or the songs, and nothing got nominated for this film. And yet it still won Best Picture, and it deservedly won. Obviously, I don't know all the movies that were nominated with it.
I could give you a rundown, but I don't think many people will know these films. Grand Hotel won. The other nominees were Aerosmith, Bad Girl, 5 Star Final, 1 Hour with You, Shanghai Express, which I'm aware of, The Champ, and The Smiling Lieutenant. Those were the nominees for that year. So we're talking. Those are old deep cut movies,
Yeah, and if you think about it, 75 years later, whatever, 80 years later, however many years it was ago, it's obvious that Grand Hotel won now, right? It's the most obvious.
Yeah, I mean, the other 2 films I've heard of are The Champ and Shanghai Express. Shanghai Express, I think I may actually have Shanghai, maybe, because it was done by Joseph von Sternberg, who I know as a director, and it starred Marlene Dietrich. So I know, I'm aware of those people. I'm aware of that film.
Is Champ a silent film, or were they all talkies at this point?
By 1932, I want to say they were all talkies.
Because I remember, yes. I recall The Champ, and I just can't put my money on who's in that. But I recall The Champ. They made a few versions of The Champ. They have.
Yeah, it's a boxing movie.
Yeah. So, all right. So, in closing, obviously, this movie is a phenomenal movie, and I'm gonna get on my soapbox here, Andrew, and I'm gonna say this: just because a movie's black and white, just because it came out 75 years ago, just because it has actors that you don't know who they are, doesn't mean you shouldn't watch these films. They are phenomenal films, and everybody should be watching this movie. And that's why we're talking about it. That's why it's in the book, and that's why we want to share these kinds of films with people. And so you take it from here.
Yeah, you can find this movie on DVD. You can find it on Blu-ray. You can, perhaps it's streaming somewhere. I think most things are streaming these days, but this is the Blu-ray here. I bought this several years ago, and yeah, it looks and sounds great. And like we've said, this is an essential movie. It's something that I don't think a lot of people are familiar with, and I think they should be. Just because of the names alone, I think are enough to get people interested in seeing it. And like Dan said, don't be afraid of black and white. It's not going to hurt you. Don't be afraid of subtitles. Don't be afraid of old movies in general, because they can be some of the best you'll ever see. They can change your perspective of just the way movies can be in general. I think movies are always evolving, are always changing, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, they really are, and that's why, art is, whether it be music, whether it be acting, whether it be painting, whether it be anything, it's always changing, and it's always expanding, and it's always moving in different directions. So to hopefully garner new followers and new people, and hopefully this movie, hopefully some people will listen to this episode of the 52 must-see movies and why they matter, and learn about this film and say, well, I want to go watch that film because these guys really had an enthusiasm about talking about it. So for Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Capzilla Productions.
And you can be jealous of him like I am when I watch his videos, because he does these haul videos that drive me crazy, because then I try to buy the things that he gets and then I go broke. He must have like an endless basket of money or something down there.
Oh, I'm the John Barrymore character. I rob people.
And you can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. And we're gonna keep churning along. We don't have many videos left. We're gonna get these finished, and this will be a complete series of 52 videos when we're all done. So for Andrew and myself, good night.